Caesarea was an extraordinary city. It was built by Herod the Great, the vassal king of Rome who ruled the area during the time of the birth of Jesus. He was called the Great because of his political maneuvering and his ability to rule a very large and complex area. He was called the Great because he was a great builder, amongst other things. He was building an enormous temple in Jerusalem to help placate the Jews. But he built this extraordinary city of Caesarea to placate the pagans, and especially the Romans. That's why he named it after Caesar. The ancient world marveled at this city. It should never have been built at all. But to make it prosperous and viable, Herod built an extraordinary artificial harbor. The city was well planned, well thought out. It was a marvel. Roman visitors came there and admired it in all of its aspects. Herod built himself there an enormous palace. He was a great builder and a great ruler, but quite an evil man. He slaughtered his own family members and anyone else who would be a threat to his rule over the area. He was a man obsessed with power and wanted to hang on to it. But like all mortals, he eventually died. But he left that great city as a testimony to his energy and his wealth. And it's very strange that Paul, a disciple of Jesus, would be safer in Caesarea than in Jerusalem. When the Roman tribune in Jerusalem sent him to Caesarea, he knew Paul would be safe from assassination. And he sent a letter of introduction to Felix, the governor. Felix read the letter and examined Paul. A few days later, arriving from Jerusalem was Ananias, a few other Jews, and a lawyer. And they presented a case against Paul before Felix, saying basically that Paul was a troublemaker, a real pain in the neck, and that he should be sent back to Jerusalem for trial, and, in their minds, execution. Paul, however, defended himself ably. I love the way Luke presents the arguments of both the lawyer against Paul and Paul. They both start by flattering Felix. Not a bad maneuver. They try to get on his good side. Felix, realizing that the debate was about religious matters that he only was vaguely aware of, postpones making a decision and essentially puts Paul under house arrest. And he continues to question Paul, talk with Paul, discuss with Paul over a period of 2 years, trying to figure out what this man was all about and why all the controversy was swirling around him. The Roman governors and procurators, they were charged with 2 things from the emperor. 1, to collect taxes and wealth from the areas they ruled over, and 2, to see to it that their areas were kept tranquil and peaceful. And in this part of the Roman Empire, that was a difficult task indeed. Each procurator, each governor, knew that his career was on the line, and he had to be certain not to make any false steps that would jeopardize his career and destabilize the area that he was ruling. So he would try to placate pagans and Jews alike, just as Herod the Great did so many decades before. But governorships and prokuratorships would run out and people would be replaced. And after 2 years, Felix was replaced by Festus. Festus first goes to Jerusalem and he hears the story against Paul for the first time. And the leaders, they say, there insist that Paul be brought to Jerusalem for trial. Although the Acts of the Apostles tell us that there were plots against him to murder him before he even had a chance to go before any type of legal procedures. Festus says, I'm going to go to Caesarea and examine the matter for myself. Which he does. And when he gets there, Agrippa, with Bernice, Agrippa is now one of the vassal rulers of the area appointed by the Romans. And they too want to hear Paul speak directly. And Paul gives them a long speech explaining his life and his beliefs. They listen to him intently and politely. But what always makes people nervous, whether it would be Felix, Festus, or Agrippa, is the religious vision of Paul said that there would be a judgment on the world and on individuals, and that we had to live lives of righteousness and self-control. We had to live lives of authentic love. And this made these politicians very, very nervous. But they listened to him nevertheless. They could hardly figure him out. In addressing Agrippa, Paul says, I realize that you understand so much about our religion and our faith. And he goes on to try to convince Agrippa of the truth of his own position. And Agrippa says something very, very important. He said, would you have me become a Christian in such a short time? And he uses the term Christian as an insult. The Christians themselves were not calling themselves that. They were followers of the way, the followers of Jesus. But the enemies of their movement called them Christian. But Paul said, yes, I would not only have you follow this way, but the whole world as well to accept this faith. And the audacity of Paul before King Agrippa and Festus the governor impressed them and also made him, in a sense, a laughingstock. Who does this fella think he is? And Festus says, oh, Paul, your great learning has driven you mad. You've studied too much, too hard, too long. Oh, Paul, you're crazy. You're really loony. And Paul insists, no, I'm perhaps the only sane one in this room. And this is the reaction to the Christian message throughout the centuries. You have to be crazy to be a disciple of Jesus. You have to be crazy to believe that a person who was executed naked on a cross was really the Son of God. You have to be crazy to believe that that person rose from the dead, physically as well as spiritually, and is now ruling a spiritual kingdom that will have no end. That is sheer and total and complete madness. And yet, it was that madness upon which Paul had based his life, his work, his mission. And he stood his ground. Privately, Agrippa and Festus would say, this fellow shouldn't even be in jail. Sure, he's a deluded religious leader, but he hasn't committed any crimes. What is he doing here? They would have liked to let him go and forget the whole matter. But they knew his opponents in Jerusalem would not let the matter rest. And they asked him, would you be willing to go to Jerusalem to face these charges? And Paul says to him, no, I will go to the emperor because I'm a Roman citizen and face those charges there.